When did you start painting, and is there a why behind that?
Yeah, so it does go back. I'm like, like a lot of artists and a lot of people that you know, that make art. It does go back. So I'm gonna go way back, okay?
Take us
Because
way back.
it does go further back.
Yeah.
So my family and I immigrated to the United States from Mexico City, right? I was born in 1988, so this must have been like in the early 90s. I was about 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we landed in Texas because it was the closest, coming up from Mexico. And so we had to go through all that. And families, even though they come to the States and they're in the States for a while, they take a while to adapt, especially my mom and dad, right?
Sure.
So my dad's hobby was painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he liked to draw and paint. And it was like a hobby, but it was a little bit higher up than a hobby because he took it fairly seriously.
Yeah.
And he was decent at it, and he did it all the time. Now, the funny thing about that is that when he painted, he wouldn't let me watch. So I would go to school. Since he would work in the evenings, I would go to school. And by the time I come back from elementary school, he'd have like a new little painting or drawing done. And I totally thought it was magic. I was like, this is magic.
Right.
What the hell? And sometimes I would get upset because I'm like, how do you do this? Because I want to do it. And I don't know. And he was the type of guy that that was his like relaxation time. So he didn't want a kid to like watch over him.
Sure.
So he did that for a while, and I just was always enamored with art. And, he would always listen to jazz music and different music like that. So that's like another thing that mixes, it's all one thing.
Right.
And so unfortunately around age 10, he passed away, super quickly from cancer.
Yeah.
So it was he was a very healthy dude. So it was like literally like 6 months, gone.
Whew.
And I think a couple of months after that, I had already been drawing, of course, but I think a couple of months after that, I was drawing this big Vegeta versus Goku drawing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it was pretty late at night, it was probably like 10. And I remember having this like huge confirmation, but also like a feeling, like a body high in that moment as a kid, and being like, I'm going to be an artist. Like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And I remember I got up and I went upstairs we lived in an apartment complex. I went to my friend's upstairs and I knocked. I'm like, I'm going to be an artist, dude. And he's just like, okay. And I was telling my mom, like, I'm going to be an artist. So essentially since that age of 10, since I had already been drawing, I kind of was just in my head, even as a teenager, in my head, like in the back of my head, I'm going to be an artist. This is who I am. It's not what I do. It's like who I am. Right?
Yeah.
And ever since then, I started drawing and it just stayed with me. It was just one of those things that always stayed with me.
Yeah. Wow. That's a powerful story.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, I guess it's life, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like maybe nothing you had control over in terms of like that feeling that arose out of it. But what you did with it, you look at your work, it looks like you've been painting since you were 10 or like making art since you were that age. And so do you think that like having that as an identity at that young age, really, did it push you? Did it fuel you?
Yeah, I felt like I guess since then I always felt like I had a purpose.
Yeah.
And my father was always a big guy. Like, anybody that did something great with his life, he admired,
Mm-hmm.
Anybody from like King Griffey Jr., Sr. and Jr. and, Miles Davis, Coltrane, anybody who he thought was great, Michael Jordan, he would always like tell me like, look at what he did with his life, or look at what she did with her life. Like, look at that. So I guess that kind of stuck within me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt like I had a purpose, and that's why I always thought like, or believed like art is what I do, and I'm going to take it as far as I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, it always drove me.